Evening with a Legend is a series of presentations exclusive to legends of the famous 24 Hours of Le Mans, giving us an opportunity to bring a piece of Le Mans to you. By sharing stories and highlights of the big event, you get a chance to become part of the legend of Le Mans with guests from different eras of over 100 years of racing.
All right, everyone, welcome to a live evening with the legend. Tonight, we have an opportunity to bring a piece of Le Mans to you, sharing in the legend of Le Mans with guests from different eras of over 100 years of racing. And as your host, I'm delighted to introduce Harley Cluxton, a notable figure in the motorsports community, known for a successful racing career with the Ferrari factory team and North American racing team, NART, in the 1970s, becoming the youngest exclusive authorized Ferrari dealer in the US at the age of 26. But did you know that he played a pivotal role in sustaining and advancing the Mirage racing team's legacy at the 24 Hours of Le Mans during the 1970s? In 1975, following Gulf Oil's withdrawal from International Motorsport, Harley acquired the Mirage team from John Wyer, and operating under his company, Grand Touring Cars, he relocated the team to Arizona and continued to field Mirage prototypes at Le Mans through the 1970s. Under his leadership, the Mirage cars consistently performed well at Le Mans, never finishing outside of the top 10, and Harley's commitment ensued that Mirage remained a competitive force in endurance racing during a transformative period in the sport. And as a result, he was also recognized as member number 1 of the International Club de Pilotes in 2012, highlighting his significant contributions to motorsport. And he's with us here tonight to recount some of that story. And with that, I'm your host, Crew Chief Eric from the Motoring Podcast Network, welcoming everyone to this evening with a legend. So Harley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
All right, Harley. Before we get into the Mirage story, earlier today there was a presentation that the folks here at the Simeone Foundation enjoyed about Luigi Chinetti and his involvement with Le Mans. And as we mentioned in the introduction, you are also part of that story. So to kick things off and lead us into your Le Mans journey, briefly tell us about the early racing days with NART, the Cinettis, and Ferrari.
Go back farther. My father had sent me to Culver Military Academy in Indiana in my 8th grade year because I had a case of terminal telephonitis with girls. And that was 1959, 1960. Only first-classmen or seniors had a television. So the plebes, which I was one, all we did for our hours off, usually read magazines, and I had my road and tracks. I first started writing Mr. Chinetti because my heroes were Dan Gurney, Phil Hill, and I'd noticed that all of these Americans had driven for Mr. Chinetti, NART. And I'm sure you've heard earlier that he had won Le Mans, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, 2 times pre-war in Alpha, and the 3rd time he won it was in 1946. That was after that misunderstandings with the Germans and the French. And so he won the first race post-war, driving 23 hours himself because his co-driver, Lord Shelton, was drunk on cognac. So this is a guy that drove 23 hours and won the 24 Hours of Le Mans himself in a Ferrari. So that was the relationship between Ferrari and Chinetti. And Ferrari only wanted to go racing. Chinetti said, you build me the cars, because I have a lot of rich, quote, customers in California, so build something that's called California, Super America, America whatever, and I'll sell them. So that was the relationship between Chinetti, and it worked out pretty well. I think I wrote for 3 years or something, and I got really, because of road and track, versed on suspensions and what was happening, and I just kept on writing all this stuff to him, never getting anything back, never really expecting to get anything back, until my junior year, I think, and I got a letter back from him. By that time, I was asking questions like, well, what happened to Phil, at Le Mans? Why did Jean de Bien didn't do something or whatever? So I got a letter back, and he said, come to Greenwich, Connecticut. Well, I was in New York at that point. So I went there, and I met him for the first time. And, he asked if I had had any racing or anything like that. And at that point, I said, just motorcycles. And he said, okay. He said, well, if you come over to Italy, to Monza, Ferrari has a driving school at Monza. I'll sponsor you. And they were Formula 2 cars. Now, I had never driven a Formula 2 car before. And there were people that had just graduated, like Jackie Ickx and Derek Bell. And so it was a real eye-opening experience. I was incredibly fast for the first lap. And then I usually went off, but I was hooked. And at that point, Mr. Kennedy was always, said, well, okay, so, you showed some good reactions, but you're not concentrating hard enough. Never really understood what that was until 2-3 years afterwards. So all through that, I graduated and then went to college. And in college, got my license, my SCCA license, through Mr. Kennedy, but it was up in Connecticut at that point. And I was at Tulane in New Orleans. He provided me a Ferrari 275 GTB that I raced, and I still think I have the lap record at Lime Rock in B production in that. So it was that sort of relationship, and that continued through my last 2 years in college. I had a real falling out with my father, and so I had to pay my tuition. So I said to Mr. Kennedy, is there anything I can do in the summer or anything like that? Thankfully in New Orleans, and the drinking age was 18 at that point, another big plus for me. Ended up being a bartender at Pete Fountains. And at the same time, Mr. Kennedy would send me a used Ferrari to sell. And he said, what I want you to do is, you sell the car, this is how much I want for the car, and you send all the money to me. And I said, okay, yes, sir, I will. Well, I said, Mr. Kennedy, I've never sold a car before. He said, well, you figure it out. I was figuring it out, and this guy calls, a very well-known man in New Orleans. He said, I saw your ad. I'd like to see this car. It was a 250 2+2 Ferrari. And I said, yes, sir, I'll bring it over. He said, yeah, bring it over. I just want to tell you that Luigi called me and told me I should buy this car. I went, thanks. So I drove over and I had all the paperwork and I had all this other stuff. And he said, okay, how much you want for it? I think it was $5,500. And I said, $5,500. He said, okay. Do you want me to make out the check to you, or how do you want to do that? So I said, just send it Mr. Kennedy, please. So that was his big test. That was Mr. Kennedy's test, which I passed. So then he continued to send more cars to me, and I got to know the car business pretty well by that time. After college, I went into the military. I came out, and on the GI Bill, I went to law school. My first year back, I guess you would say, I was in law school, a freshman, first year law. And so he asked me if, I said, I'd really like to race if I could. And he said, okay, well, why don't you go race Daytona then? You can race for me at Daytona. And that was pretty exciting. And so Ronnie Bucknam was my co-driver, who's a pretty famous American driver. He drove for Ford at Le Mans, and very, very good driver. And he won Honda Formula One's first race in Formula One. So he was really good and patient. Could have been drunk, I'm not sure. But we're doing really well, and I was picking up my lap times and everything. About 3 o'clock in the morning, the left front wheel came off the car while I was driving. Everybody said at that point it was just lucky that the left front wheel came off, because if it was the right front wheel, I'd probably be in Pompano Beach right now. At that point, at Daytona, there was no lights. I mean, there's some lights on the track, but not a lot of light, not like the infield is now or anything like that. So there's sparks, and I went into the infield, and then I walked back, crossed the grass into the pits. Mr. Gurney looked at me and said, where's the car? And I was going, well, it's over there. What happened? I said, well, the wheel came off. And he says to me, just dead serious, the steering wheel or the tire? I said, Mr. Gurney, it was a tire, the wheel. Okay, go sit over there. And at that point, Dan Gurney, my hero, was racing a 512S. 1970 with Chuck Parsons. I go back into the pits, and I'm sitting there, and Dan comes in, and I'd met him really for the first time. He was a very big man. I mean, he was huge, but he also had huge hands. And I remember I came into the pits, and he was pissed. The door of the 512 flew open. The whole shift, along with the shift knob itself, came flying into the pits. And I mean, I saw it coming and ducked, almost yelled grenade. And this thing, bang, smash, everything. He said something, I don't remember what it was, and he gets out of the car. And then Parsons looks in and says, well, it's screwed. He had ripped the whole shift linkage, everything out of the car. So that was the first time I got to meet Dan Gurney.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So you finally get to Le Mans behind the wheel of the Ferrari 512 Longtail. And you told me a story earlier that I think the crowd would really enjoy, which was your story about Pedro Rodriguez down the straightaway. So you want to share that with them? I think it's a fun little anecdote.
So Pedro Rodriguez was my driving instructor when I was getting my license. And that was when I think I was 16 years old, or 17, I guess. Because I would go up with Canetti, go up to Elkhart Lake, and he would be racing for Canetti in the Can-Am and stuff like that. And I got to know him. He was great. I mean, he was intense. Would call me Gringo. When I say a piece of work, really a piece of work, but he was very, very good. And so when I raced at Daytona, Pedro had called me over. I saw him. He introduced me to John Wyer. That's how I met John Wyer. There's kind of famous picture of me sitting there and kind of looking down at him, and he's looking up at me, and he has his hands together and sort of like explaining stuff to me. And what he was saying was, you stay, Gringo, in your lane. I pass, I pass, I pass. So that was Pedro. At Le Mans in 1970, I was driving a 512 Longtail, the same way that this car is. This is 917, obviously. It was a 512S, but a Longtail. And it was raining. It was pissing with rain. And unlike this car, Ferrari decided it would be really cool to put the rear view mirror up above your head and then cut a hole in the back so that you would look in the roof. The theory was you could look up and see this behind you. Well, that was all great, except it was raining, so all of the water was coming in. The windshield wiper was, at that point, typical Ferrari. It was going like mad, but it was like 3 inches off the windshield because of the aerodynamics, so it was going crazy. I'm looking down, all the water's going, and the battery's over here, and I'm thinking, oh, this is just great. And so I'm going down the Mulsanne, which at that point was 4.8 miles. Very daunting. The first time you do it, you're watching your RPM, and it's up where it's supposed to be, but it just goes on and on and on and on. And you hear every little bit of noise, everything, and the thing is screaming.
At speeds of in excess of 230 miles an hour.
Yeah, I was doing 228. Pedro was doing 237. So it's raining, as I said, and the reason they call it the Mulsanne Strait is the town of Mulsanne is down at the end. If you just went straight, you go right through the town. Well, then there's a hard right corner at the end. I'm going down, and I'm thinking at this point, there's no human alive that's going as fast as I am. Because I was gripping the wheel like you're not supposed to be doing. I was rigid, and I was talking to myself, saying, I have the wheel straight. I'm not moving. And the car was aquaplaning. And it was like, and so I'm looking through this would-be rear-view mirror, and I see these blinking lights. They're coming in. I'm thinking, what the hell? And so they come up closer, and I see it's a Golf Porsche. And it comes up, and here's little Pedro. It's like down like this. And as he drives by, he goes and just motors right by me. So I don't know if you've ever been kicked in the nuts before, but that's what I felt like. And so, I'm supposed to say that?
You're good.
Okay. I lost about, 500 RPM. I come into the pits, it's raining, Fogheri's there going, and the Italians are going like this. And I pull in, and I tell Fogheri, who was the engineer and the team manager and everything else, that it was having a problem with the gearbox. I was jumping out at fifth unless I was on it all the time. So I tell him it's a Cambio, that. And Mr. Canetti's sitting there with his stupid-looking hat on. It's a rain hat, kind of. And he looked like Clouseau, honestly. I love the guy, but he looked like Inspector Clouseau, the Sûreté. And he had this beige aquascutum raincoat on, and he's sitting there, and, I've never understood the Italian aristocracy, whether it was Ferrari or whether it was Chidi at Alfa. They wear a belt and suspenders. which never understood, never do. But anyway, so there he was, and I come over to him, and I go, yes, and he looks at me in the eyes, and then he grabs me by the, on my driving suit, and pulls me really close, about this far. And he looks at me in the eye and he goes, Pedro, and I go, and then he just walks over. So that was Pedro, and this car was racing at the same time.
And we're going to get more into this car as we go along.
Yeah.
So after your whole adventure at Ferrari, which was a beautiful relationship that you had, especially being an authorized dealer here in the States, and it motivated you to acquire Mirage, what was the impetus for that decision? What made you get involved in that, going from driver to now team owner? What did you envision for Mirage's future?
I did go to law school. I did graduate, and I also got my master's in constitutional law, and then reality set in, and I had to go work at a law firm, which was a huge law firm in downtown Chicago called Baker McKenzie, which is a gigantic law firm, and that was definitely no fun. It was reality, and everything you've heard about Chicago is true. And I was a constitutional lawyer, and I'd just come back from the military, and they were saying, well, you've got to represent this alderman. And aldermen in Chicago, it's a fiefdom. So you got 8 different areas in Chicago, all downtown. And they're supposed to represent this group of 8 blocks, 10 blocks. Well, at the same time, they were holding up all of the store owners for protection. And I was supposed to be representing this guy. Well, I told him I wasn't going to do that. So I just couldn't see myself practicing law for the next 20 years or 30 years, and called up Mr. Kennedy. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And he said, okay, probably I have to talk to Ferrari. Okay. He talked to Ferrari, and they said, we'll give you a dealership, but it has to be west of the Mississippi River. Well, I'd gone east to get my master's in constitutional law. I didn't like the weather there. I hated Chicago weather, snow and all that stuff. So I looked, and California was definitely out of the question. So I looked at Arizona. I thought, this is great. It's got fantastic airport, international. There's nobody living there. It's got roads you can go crazy on. And so I said, I'd like to have Arizona. So he gave me Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico. And then the other thing that they did, which was fantastic, was they knew that I didn't have any money to speak of. Ferrari and Kennedy funded me for the first 3 years. In other words, paid my floor plan. They would send the cars out, and then I would sell them and everything like that. So we're done with Ferrari, okay? During that time, I continued to race for Kennedy, and as I said, Pedro Rodriguez, my driving instructor, he had introduced me to John Wyer. Well, all during this time, I'd never got to physically see the Gulf team cars, the GT40s running. Actually, the first time I saw 1075, which is the first double Le Mans winning car. It won in 1968 and 69. 68, it won with Pedro Rodriguez. And then 69, it was Jackie Ickx, which ended up to be the closest race and most famous race at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So this was the car. Knew Derek Bell by that point really, really well. And so he had been racing Mirages. And after the 68, 69, he was racing for Ferrari. Then in 1970, the FIA came out with its formula. It was a 5-liter formula, and you had to make 25 cars. Porsche made 25 cars. Ferrari made 25 cars, but that was Ferrari because the last 8 cars, the tires were wood, and there was, it was Ferrari. And Porsche, of course, had everything down. So that's how that happened. And so it just continued to flow. And when I was still racing for Ferrari, John Wyer had called. I respected the heck out of him just because he approached Le Mans the way that you should approach it. You've got to be able to manage your drivers. But Wyer was just a master. Ferrari could never figure it out. John made sure that the drivers stayed within maybe a second every lap. And they could go faster, but they were never allowed to go faster. They had to stay, each of them. And that was because you would build up enough time that when you made a pit stop and you had to fix something, you had 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You wouldn't lose the lead. And that happened when he won Le Mans. He won the World Championship for Porsche. He won the World Championship for Ford when Ford didn't do it, with the GT40s. He was a master tactician, but he kept to an absolute, this is the way you do it. And I learned from that. And he was my mentor as far as learning how to manage a car, manage drivers, and everything like that. So John called and said, Harley, Gulf Oil, you all don't remember, but maybe you do. They got into a lot of problems along with Texaco with the U.S. government because they were going down to South America, both of them, and paying off their oil ministers, whatever country it was, for drilling rights. And that was a big no-no. So Texaco was less, but apparently Gulf Oil was pretty blatant about it. So their lawyers said to them, you've got to go low profile. Well, it's kind of hard to go low profile when you've got a baby blue and orange race car, and you're also sponsoring all the tennis tournaments in the United States, and you're also sponsoring all the golf tournaments in the United States. So John said, well, they have to sell the team and the cars. Okay, well, that's cool. That's really cool. You need to buy them. I said, well, John, and at that point he was in Grasse in France. He just retired. And so this was the long distance phone call. And I said, well, John, I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? And I said, well, that's great. Thank you so much. It's a real compliment. But John, I don't have the experience. Yes, you do. Well, I don't have that sort of money. Yes, you do. No, I don't think I do. And so this went back and forth. I said, I don't want to embarrass you, and I don't want to embarrass myself. He said, just make the bloody offer. A lot more colorful. I said, okay, if I go and I call these people and I buy it, I'm not going to buy it unless you promise that you will consult. And he said, absolutely, I'll be there. And then John Horsman said, I'll move to the United States. And I said, okay. So I called up the gentleman I was supposed to call. And I said, Mr., I think his name was Kelsey. This is Harley Cluxton. Oh, yes, Mr. Cluxton, we were looking forward to your calling. How much are you offering? And this was the whole team. That was all of the trademark rights. That was all of the equipment, 2 race cars ready to go, a transporter, which we named the Queen Mary. I think 3 mechanics were thrown into it, and John Horsman. So I offered a ridiculous amount of money.
$50, I heard.
Yeah, well, no, 75. That was ridiculous. I think it was $200,000. No, maybe it was 120.
In 1970s dollars.
Yeah, $75.
Yeah.
So I buy the Mirage team. I was racing at Le Mans in 1975 for Mr. Kennedy. I'm there. There's 5 cars Kennedy has, basically representing the factory, because that 75 was going to be a fuel run. So you had to have these cars get the most fuel efficient. In other words, what they did was they cut down a 60-gallon fuel tank down to 40 gallons, and cars had to go slower, which meant also it had to be more aerodynamically efficient, and you could stretch the mileage and still keep the speed up. With Kennedy, he didn't have any of these prototypes or the Group 6 cars, which the Mirages were. He was racing 365 Boxer and 3 Daytonas, and I was in a 308 GT4. And so he got into a real contest with one of the ACO supervisors, I should say, a technical inspection, and they had put the 308 GT4 in Group 5, which is a 935 Porsche. And he said, that's impossible because they've made enough cars now. This Frenchman said, well, Ferrari never notified us of that. And Kennedy went, well, I can get him to notify you right now. And he said, no, it's too late. You can't race the car. You can't race it in this. So he said, if I can't race the car, then I'm going to pull the cars. Well, it got ugly. Kennedy finally said, well, I'm going to pull all the cars. And the Frenchman said, you do it. So he pulled all the cars. I went to Mr. Kennedy and I said, can I go over to the Mirage team? And he said, yeah, go. And so I was over in my Ferrari driving suit, and then they won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. That was where, then I brought them home.
So that's a very important point that you bring up, because this weekend coincides with the 50th anniversary of the Mirage GR8s finishing the 1975 Le Mans, which you just mentioned winning. And there's some other notable stats here that you shared with me. So 6-time Le Mans winner Jackie Ickx behind the wheel, a second win, and 5-time winner Derek Bell, first-time win for Joussard, etc. There's a whole list of famous names at Mirage at this point, and you're joining the team, and you're getting more and more involved.
Everybody that is famous in your mind drove for John Wyer, and he was called Death Ray. He would talk to his drivers, and they had to be absolutely loyal. And when I say loyal, because he would go, and he never did it to me, but I could see how he could do it. He would go, and when he was giving a driver test for a potential team driver, and it would be at Brands Hatch, it could be at Silverstone, and he would be hiding in the bushes. And I swear to God, Vern Schuppan told me that, and he's Australian, so he's really colorful language. And he said, I was going, and I screwed up, and I looked up, and there was Death Ray looking at me. And at that point, again, it was important to remember that when I drove the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and when Mario, who drove for me, drove the 24 Hours of Le Mans in '82, it was the old 24 Hours of Le Mans. You only had 2 drivers. Now you have 3 drivers, and it's a sprint because the course has been cut up and you've got so many chicanes have been put in, and you never get up to a lot of speed. They did it for safety, apparently.
And then you stay involved, like you said, through the 70s into the 80s with Mario Andretti and things like that. So let's talk about your time as a team owner. What sticks out and stands out to you as some of the memorable moments at Mirage?
Learning from John Wyer. All of the drivers loved him and respected him. He was such a figure. It was Mr. Wyer. It was this, that, and always, and it was baffled me how I ever got into that position with him. I brought him to Scottsdale, and he was just world of knowledge. And so basically the deal was with John, I said, I'll get the sponsorship, you run the cars, and that was the deal.
75, last time you drove at Le Mans. Did you retire from motorsport at that point as a driver?
Yes.
Okay, so full-time team owner and that. So when you reflect back on Mirage's legacy and all the time you spent there, how did that change you?
I mean, as far as the way I look at the French?
Well, how you look at motorsport, right? Because it's a different lens when you're a team owner and a team principal versus being a driver, right?
Yeah.
More politics, more bureaucracy, more to do, more.
Well, I think having driven there and been a driver, going back to Le Mans, it's a love-hate relationship, and I mean really hate, and whoever the twisted, really demented ACO member that came up with said, okay, well, we have 12-hour races, why don't we have a 24-hour race? I know so many Americans that have been looking for this jerk's grave just to beat it to death, because it's one of those deals you just keep on going because it's heartbreak until the very last. You never know. We were leading the 79 race up until the 23rd hour. Again, it was pissing with rain, and we fell out. Derek was driving for me then, and the 936s, which were my nemesis, because we'd won in 75, and I came in second in 76 behind them, and then 77, I thought I was really going to get them because we were using Renault turbocharged motor. Came in second again, and that was the second most famous race. That's when Ix went crazy and drove.
With Hurley Haywood, yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff, and Jurgen Barth and all that. Continued, and then with Le Mans, it's a real sickness. It really is. Because if you go and you're a team owner or a driver, you just pray that if you're going to fall out, you fall out in the first 2 hours, 3 hours, because it just sucks to fall out at 4 o'clock in the morning or just when the sun's coming up. There are things that John would expect of his drivers. You will do this, you will do that. Your pit stops are going to be this, and if there's a screw up. And so he was the first manager, I guess you would say, and he's a legend of Le Mans, that would take notes, and I have all of his notes, everything, and take the time it took in the pits, each car, and each driver, and then figure out, came in with a broken whatever, and how long it was in the pits, also the growth of the tires, which is a big deal, because if you're doing 235 miles an hour, the tires grow. That lifts the car up, and then it gets really wobbly, and so it's all of that stuff. And the pit stops were down to half seconds, fueling everything, and then the driver's comparison every lap, and drivers are drivers. So anyway, I learned all of that, and I learned race management, which is hugely important, to be able to manage everything, to make sure that you've built up enough reserve time with your lap times that you've set, that you can repair something, because the cars were always breaking. Unlike today, that's going on right now, it's a sprint race. You have the Mulsanne, but then you have 2 of these chicanes, and I doubt the hypercars are getting up to 210, 215. I mean, this Porsche was actually the 1971 Porsche Longtail, which LaRousse was driving. Gerard LaRousse was driving this car too. 248 miles an hour every lap at night. That's impressive.
With your legs hanging out up by the lights.
Leg is short. But it's impressive.
Well, since you mentioned it, and we promised the audience that we would talk more about this car, so you got involved in this car. You competed against this car. You talked about your racing against Pedro Rodriguez in the Ferraris and whatnot. How did you get involved in the Hippie Porsche? How did you come to own this car, and what drew you to it?
This was a 2-year deal. It's 25 cars, 70 and 71. Then it went to a new formula, which was Group 6. And that turned into, it had to be a 3-liter Formula One motor, and you could do it open, you could do it closed, but it had to be a 3-liter Formula One base motor. Before, through 1967, it was bring you race what you bought. Anyway, Ford, of course, brought 550 horsepower. Ferrari was 475 horsepower in the P4s, or less. But that was a difference in what we were doing. So my love for Porsches, I mean, I can tell you everything about the tail end of a 936 or one of these things. So it motivated me.
Yeah, you acquired this car. You had it in your possession for a while. Did you ever get to turn a lap in this car? And what was it like compared to the Ferraris that you drove?
John Wyer had told me, and Horsman also, because I always looked at the 512s as clunkers compared to these Porsches. And John Wyer said they were built better. The Germans didn't really care about the drivers. They were expendable. And he said the M Ferrari, which was the 1971 car, was actually pretty good. He said, but Ferrari decided, which they did, because it was the end of the last year, they didn't develop. The only thing I did was, I pretty well known for this because, again, it's Arizona, had a very good relationship with the Scottsdale Airport management, because I also fly helicopters. So I knew them, and I asked them all along the way, can I test a car on the runway? And they said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I tested Formula One cars and everything like that. Well, I went out in this car. We just painted it. It was everything that I had heard from John Wyer about your feet are hanging out in front of the wheels. It all came back to me because as I accelerated, first of all, I'm short. The visual, your sight picture, you usually go off the front fenders, stuff like that, or a visual point. Well, there's nothing the way that this windshield is that you can really get a visual shot at what you're aiming at. But more than that was, I don't think I was doing 60 miles an hour. Airport runways, I don't know if you've ever been on one, but they're not like roads. They're usually cement and stuff, so you go boom, boom, boom. I was getting so much wind through the cockpit, through the footwell, that I was getting dust, I was getting everything else, and it was like my feet were that far out, and I could feel through my driving shoes, I could feel coming up, it was air. And that is not a good feeling you want to have, knowing that the first thing you're going to hit, if you go in nose first, is your feet. That was what was really lethal with a lot of drivers, and then also the fuel deal. So to say, if I got up to 100 miles an hour, I doubt it. I doubt it. Incredibly fast cars, but I mean, if you made a mistake, or somebody made a mistake for you, the guy in front of you, whatever.
Lethal.
No bueno.
Getting into our final segment here, let's talk a little bit about the future. So for those of you sitting in the audience, you're here watching Le Mans as part of the viewing party. In a couple of weeks, the Le Mans Classic is happening. That's 24 hours of vintage cars. Harley, do you see Mirage participating in the Classic in the future? And if so, will you be involved?
Well, they already have. They've won the GR7s, which is the Gulf Racing 7s. So that would be 1974 car. We have, of the two, there's the number 10 car that came in second 2 times. Well, came in third with Schuppen driving in the 1975 Le Mans, and then second overall is now racing Le Mans Classic. And the 74 car has won the Le Mans Classic 3 times, so it's a Gulf Mirage with a Cosworth motor. So, yes, they're very, very good. And the great thing about it is that when you go to the Classic, you'll see all of these cars. You won't see the 917s that much. I mean, the last time I think that a 917 race there was with Bobby Rahal, raced a 917 that he owned with Brian Redman. And they had exactly the same problem that Wyer had with his 917s, with the aerodynamic changes, that the inner wheel bearings, when you're running it, they get really hot and then they seize.
And wheels come flying off, yeah.
That or you go flying off. And so They were apparently arguing with each other and to stop. And they were smart enough, mature enough, I guess you'd say. Said, no, let's do this again. So if you ever look at Brian Redmond, you see, he's got all of these wrinkles around, whereas baklava, you wear balaclava, I should say, not the Greek food, sorry. And it's burned. And that was in a 908 Porsche, winning the Targa Florio in 1973, and I think maybe it was 1974. Same car. The car was upside down, crashed, and he was caught. Fuel tank burst, and he was caught on fire, and he was able to crawl out because this is a Targa Florio. Nobody came for 35 minutes. So that's why they don't do that anymore. But I'm just saying how dangerous these cars are. Pedro died in a 512, same deal. So the Le Mans Classic, and talking with really great guy, Chris McAllister, who has a 917 Porsche that has a Golf car and God knows what else. He drives it just the way it was. That's the cool thing about the Le Mans Classic. You're going to see real cars out there that you'd never see any other place driving at Le Mans. So it's really exciting. It's really fun. And as Gerard Roos told me when he brought me back after, I promised I'd never go back to Le Mans after Le Mans 82, and he called up, you've got to come back, make you honor member number one, and I thought it was going to be another Diem Vim Foo, and I told him that. And he said, no, it's okay. So I came back, and I hadn't been to Le Mans, and this was 2011. He came back and he said, I have to warn you, the track has changed. And I said, okay, for the good or bad? He said, it's really bad. It's really bad. It's really bad. And then I went and I watched, and it's like really bad, really bad. Just because, it was the most difficult road race in the world. Now it's a sprint race. You've lost so many factors that went into it to make it the most difficult and the race for manufacturers to win.
Well, I guess we'll give that to the Nürburgring 24 now, right?
Yeah. Or the old Spa.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Le Mans. We're here. We're watching the race. Are you rooting for Ferrari? Or you have any other projections?
I think it's great that Ferrari won, and they did. And knowing Ferrari as I do, and I'm sure that you all know enough that know that their F1 team is hopeless. Nobody was allowed to work. None of the engineers, none of the F1 team, no. You guys just continue to screw your things up over in there. So this was all done by Alpha Corsa. And so, which is, I guess you'd say, a semi-factory team. Dallara built the car, and then AF Corsa working, driving, and all these teams, and they won in last year and the year before. And this year they're having a tough time, I think. I'm just surprised Penske hasn't won. They got 4 cars, and it's a very, very difficult formula because the only thing the manufacturer has is that you have 3 chassis choices. You have Multimatic, you have Dallara, Cadillac has picked Dallara, BMW has Dallara, Porsche has Multimatic, which is, of course, in Canada. And then all you do is you put your motor in. Everybody has the same transmissions. You can do aerodynamically, comes from Dallara, or you can have your design guy, as long as it meets that spec. Well, this hybrid stuff, it's so expensive. And I think, to answer your question, who do I want to win? I'd love to see Aston Martin win, only because, no. One is that the whole team is in Arizona, and it's a normally aspirated car. It's a 6.4-liter 12-cylinder. How bad is that? But of course, then you have to dumb it down to 580 horsepower or whatever it is. And there are too many regulations as far as if you have one team win, whether it's in GT3 or hypercar, if they win like 3 years in a row, well, then they get this BOP selectively served on them. Mm-hmm. So Ray Hall's had it happen. So it's a very difficult formula to understand. I don't like it. What can I tell you? We have it in IndyCar, and it's just a joke. I'll give you an example. With these hypercars, as they call them, the drive shafts have torque meters on them. And the torque meter is to make sure that you're putting out 528 horsepower. Well, that's really great. But if you go off the road, this torque meter, one wheel, is going to go crazy. Well, what happens is they have home base. And so they'll sit there, and the minute they see it, they go, and you lose 200 horsepower on the straight. Give me a break. Let's go racing. So that's my opinion on it.
All right. Well, Harley, last question. What's next for you? You're still very much involved in motorsport. What's next? Anything coming up you want to share?
No, I'm just desperately looking for fun. No, it's I like vintage racing. It's really fun, but you get to the age where you're not as good as you think you should be or want to admit, and I'm there. And so I have fun now if I go out and buy an Alpha GTA and go out and smoke Porsches all day, or a Cobra or something that's great. Vintage racing, for me, should be, or any professional driver, you should be able to take a black and white picture of that car that you're driving, and then take a black and white picture of you driving, and if it isn't all twisted up and one wheel up, you're cheating, because that's the way that the cars were.
Well, on that note, folks, we've had the privilege of revisiting a fascinating chapter in endurance racing history through the experiences of Harley Cluxton. From taking the reins of the Mirage team after Gulf Oil's exit and guiding them through a remarkable run of successes at Le Mans, including the win in 75 and podium finishes in 76 and 77, Harley's vision and leadership helped preserve one of the sport's most iconic privateer efforts. His dedication not only extended the Mirage legacy, but also embodied the entrepreneurial spirit that defines motorsport's golden age.
God, I love him. I know, right? I absolutely love him.
With that, we hope you enjoyed this presentation and look forward to more Evening with a Legend throughout the season. And on behalf of everyone here, the ACO USA, and those listening at home.
Listening at home? What? You never told me that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Harley.
Oh, God.
And that's a wrap. No, thank you.
This episode has been brought to you by the Automobile Club of the West and the ACO USA. From the awe-inspiring speed demons that have graced the track to the courageous drivers who have pushed the limits of endurance, the 24 Hours of Le Mans is an automotive spectacle like no other. For over a century, the 24 Hours Le Mans has urged manufacturers to innovate for the benefit of future motorists, and it's a celebration of the relentless pursuit of speed and excellence in the world of motorsports. To learn more about or to become a member of the ACO USA, look no further than www.lemans.org. Click on English in the upper right corner, and then click on the ACO Members tab for club offers. Once you've become a member, you can follow all the action on the Facebook group ACO USA Members Club and become part of the legend with future Evening with the Legend meetups. This episode has been brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports as part of our Motoring Podcast Network. For more episodes like this, tune in each week for more exciting and educational content from organizations like the Exotic Car Marketplace, the Motoring Historian, Break Fix, and many others. If you'd like to support Grand Touring Motorsports and the Motoring Podcast Network, sign up for one of our many sponsorship tiers at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. Please note that the content, opinions, and materials presented and expressed in this episode are those of its creator, and this episode has been published with their consent. If you have any inquiries about this program, please contact the creators of this episode via email or social media as mentioned in the episode.